Hi guys, welcome to our second lesson of English Online. Today we are going to be having a look at the skill of visualization. This is a skill that helps us to comprehend the things that we read, which applies to all different text types, including poetry. We are going to be using this term so that we can really understand the meaning behind different poems by building a picture in our brains. Okay, so today we are learning to visualize the text that we see so that we can build a deeper understanding of characters and settings. We will be successful when we can comprehend the language being used to describe the setting, make connections to self and to the world to add more information about the setting, and to draw a picture based on the movie that we have built in our brains. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at what visualization is. So, when we are visualizing, the readers will use clues from the text to create a picture in their head. They will use their five senses to imagine what is happening in the story so that they can play that like a movie in their minds, adding all of the extra details. And that's why we need to make connections to ourselves and to the world, because not all of the information will be in a text. Sometimes they will rely on you to know things about that before you can fully understand. Okay? So, for example, if an author was to use the word banana, they might not describe a banana. They might just assume that you know what a banana is. All right, let's have a look at doing that for the poem The Open Sea.
Alrighty guys, so we're about to get started. We're going to have a go at comprehending this text. Before we can do that, we are going to have to read the text all the way through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read The Open Sea by Dorothea McKellar. You should be following along as I go, and that way you will be able to understand the text as well. What I'm going to do as I go is I'm going to be thinking of words that you might not know the meanings of, but I want you to find those ones as well. So we should have already done this as a class, so you should know the words that you don't quite know yet. But if you come across any new ones, I want you to just put a little circle around them or remember them in your head, and we're going to go through some of the meanings of those words a little bit later. If there are any that you're still stuck on after we do this activity, I want you to send them to me in an email and I can help you with those. Okay, so I'm going to start reading. I want you to follow along, finding the words that you don't know. From my window I can see where the sandhills dip, one far glimpse of open sea, just a slender slip, curving like the crescent moon, yet a greater prize than the harbor garden fair, spread beneath my eyes. Just below me swings the bay, sings a sunny tune, but my heart is far away, out beyond the June. Clearer far the seagulls cry, and the breakers roar, then the little waves beneath, lapping at the shore. From that strip of sapphire sea, set against the sky, far horizons mean to me, and the ships go by, framed between the empty sky and the yellow sands, while my freight thoughts follow them out to other lands. All its changes who can tell? I have seen it shine, like a jewel polished well, hard and clear and fine. Then soft lilac, and again, on another day, glimpsed it through a veil of rain, shifting, drifting gray. When the livid waters flee, flinching from the storm, from my window I can see, standing safe and warm, how the white foam tosses high on the naked shore, and the breakers' thunder grows to a battle roar. Far and far I look, 10 miles? No, for yesterday. Sure I saw the blessed isles 20 worlds away. My blue moon of open sea, is it little worth? At the least it gives to me keys of all the earth. Okay, so reading that beautiful poem there, did you find any words that you weren't quite sure of? I had a look, and I'm remembering back from when we had a look at this as my class, and I'm going to underline the words that I think we did not quite understand the meanings of, and ones that we might get a little bit confused about, because we can't understand a text if we don't understand the vocabulary in it. So we're going to break that vocabulary down. Okay, here, sandhills, glimpse, slender, crescent moon, harbor. Okay, that's all I've got for this stanza. I'm going to go on to the next stanza in just a minute, but let's have a look at the definitions of these words. So sandhills here. I want you to have a think about what the word sandhills might mean. Looking at the etymology of this word, you can break it down into sand and hills. We should know those two words. So we know what sand means. It's the stuff that you find on the beach. And we know what hills are. Yeah, cool. So sandhills are just hills of sand. Glimpse. Glimpse is another word that we might not have heard before, but it is a pretty good word that we should be learning. So using a strategy here, since I'm not there to answer your questions, unless you email me, what's a different strategy that you could use to find the definition of the word glimpse? Yep, you could try asking somebody else in your house. You could try asking the internet, so Googling it. You could try looking in a dictionary if you have a dictionary at your house, okay? All very good strategies that we have practiced in class so that you can find the definitions of words, okay? So glimpse is just like a look. So one far glimpse of open sea would mean that she can see the sea, just a tiny bit of the sea. She can see it just a little bit. Okay, just a slender slip. Slender was a word that we identified as a class that we did not know the meaning of. Slender means thin, okay? When my class was doing this, they thought slender like Slender Man, and then they came up with definition words for Slender Man, and I think that's pretty cool. So we describe Slender Man as white and tall and skinny, okay? So we could think, do those other words make sense here? Just a white slip? Not really. Just a tall slip? Not really. Just a skinny slip? Yeah, that does make sense, okay? So we deduced that the word slender meant skinny. So you can try that strategy as well. If you have a word association going on with one of the words that we find here, you can associate that with something else that you know and see if that definition makes sense there. Okay, curving like the crescent moon. We should know that the crescent moon obviously relates to the moon, not a full moon. It is just the sliver of a moon, okay? So the crescent moon is when it's nice and skinny, just skinny and curved. So it matches here, skinny and curved. Okay, harbor was the other one that we found in stanza 1. So harbor is a place. A harbor is near the ocean, which makes sense based on the poem that we are reading. Pretty much the harbor is the docks around the ocean or the sea where the boats come in to dock, okay? So a harbor garden fair would be a fair that is hosted at the harbor, so on the edge of the ocean. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to have a go at looking through each of these other stanzas. I want you to underline all the words that you don't know, just like we did, and then I want you to look those up. So using one of our strategies, so you could ask somebody that's in your house that would be knowledgeable. You could look it up on the internet, you could look it up in a dictionary, or you could try a word association thing, or etymology. So you could try to associate the word with something else you know, like slender relating to Slender Man, or you could try and break the word down, like sand hills, broken down into sand and hills. Okay, so I want you to have a go at doing that now for each of these other stanzas. Okay, so I have had a look through now, and I have underlined all the words that I think might be a little bit confusing, or we might not know the definitions of in this context. So that's the other thing that we need to be aware of, is that if we're looking up these words on the internet or in a dictionary, it's going to give you one definition, and sometimes words mean different things in different scenarios. Okay, so let's look at an example of that. This one here. I underlined the word naked here. We all know what naked means in terms of a person, but in this context, on the naked shore, it doesn't mean doesn't have any clothes on, okay? So that might be what you looked up in the dictionary, but here, naked just means bare, so empty. So that's another thing that we need to be aware of. Some of the definitions you found might suit the word, but they might not suit the context that we've got here. So I'm gonna go through these words. If you had any others, remember, just send them to me in an email if you don't understand them in this context, okay? Okay, June. June is a word that I've identified here that you might not know the definition of. Some of us should know the definition of that. A dune is the same as a sandhill. So a dune is literally just a big mound of sand. breakers. So, breakers, if you tried using etymology for that one, break, we know that it's when poof, you smash something, okay? Again, let's check that out in this context. And the breaker's roar, so and the smasher's roar, doesn't really work, so we could try a different strategy there. So, the breakers here is referring to the waves, okay? So breakers are the really, really big crashing waves. So just like breaking, they make that big poosh sound, but it doesn't mean anything's getting broken. It just means that they're a loud type of wave. So that makes sense in this context, and the breakers roar, it means the waves are really loud. Okay, then we've got lapping here and shore. Lapping, I did a little action when I was reading that, because I know what the word lapping means. If we look in the context, it says, so the breakers roar, so the waves are really loud, they're more loud than the little waves beneath lapping at the shore. So lapping is almost an onomatopoeia word here. It is sort of just the sound it makes. So lapping, a lapping wave would be when the water just splashes up on the edge really gently and makes that quiet little sound like lapping, okay? Shore, the edge of the sea, okay? So we've got that stanza done. Here, the only word that I identified in this one that you might not know the definition of would be sapphire. So we all know what a sapphire is, probably. It's a type of gem. In this context, it doesn't mean that the sea is made of gems. So it doesn't say, for that strip of gemmy sea, okay? It's using the word sapphire here to describe the color of the sea. So the color of sapphire, I was trying to explain it the other day. It's pretty difficult to explain. It's like a royal blue, but a little bit darker. Again, if you Google that and you look that up in Google Images, you'd be able to see the color of a sapphire. And that is what Dorothea Michel is using here to describe what the sea looks like. Okay, over here we've got lilac. Lilac is a gentle type of purple. Again, you could look that one up. She's using that word to describe color. She's not just adding the word purple. She is using a much more descriptive word there because it is a specific type of that color. Okay? Glimpsed, again, links back to glimpse here. So if you did not know what this word was and you try to look it up in the dictionary, you probably wouldn't have found it because it would have been glimpse, not glimpsed, that you would have had to find. So again, that means look. So I could see it through a veil of rain. Down here, livid waters flee. If you're livid, that's a difficult one for me to describe. Feeling livid is like a feeling where you're maybe anxious and really angry. Okay, so for example, if there was a really, really frustrating situation, you might go, I'm livid, okay? Let's see how that works in the context of the water though, because obviously water or the ocean can't feel angry. So let's have a look at this in context. It says, when the livid waters flee, okay, so they're fleeing, which means they're running away. So they're running away probably scared. So maybe that's what livid means in that context. And that says, flinching from the storm. We should know what flinching means. It's when you sort of cower away a little bit from a situation that might scare you or hurt you. Okay, we've discussed what naked means in this context. And breakers, again. So we've got the definition of that one. The breakers, thunder grows. So breakers here, again, is the waves. Thunder here is not meaning like crash, bang, boom, like with lightning. It's describing the sound of the waves. Okay? Miles is a different form of measurement for length, which we'll go into a little bit later in the term, but miles is the American version of measuring, is their equivalent of a kilometer, even though it's a little bit longer than that. And Blessed Isles is one as well that we might not have known what it was. If you looked that one up, that would have been a pretty good strategy there, because that would not have been in a dictionary. I know that this would probably not be in a dictionary because it's got a capital for each word. Having a capital for each word tells me that this is a place. Okay? So you could look that one up on the internet to find what this place looks like. And it would probably give you a bit of context as to where Dorothea Mackellar is when she's writing this poem. Okay, so now that we have comprehended the vocabulary of the text, we can try to make text to self and text to world connections to build a picture in our brains. Okay? The reason why we need to do this and make those text to self and text to world connections is because This text does not give you all the information you need to understand where she is and what things look like and whatever else. You've got to use your own imagination, okay? So it says here that she's looking out a window. What do you think a window looks like? Because she has not described the window at all. So you've got to make it a text-to-self connection there to say, my windows look like this. Maybe she's looking at the same type of window that I have. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so finding another example here might be, ooh, how about over here? The white foam tosses high. White foam. Do you think she's talking about like whipped cream? Do you think she's talking about like the saliva that comes out of a rabid dog? Probably not. She is talking about the foam from the ocean, but she's mentioned white foam. She hasn't specifically said the foamy stuff that comes out of the ocean sometimes when it's really, really rough weather. You would have to make a connection to yourself to say, I know what that looks like. Or you can make a connection to the world inadvertently by going on the internet, looking up what the white foam of the ocean looks like, and then making that connection yourself if you had not seen it, okay? So these are things that we need to do to build that picture in our minds, because we can see, yeah, white foam, but you might be picturing whipped cream in a cup, whereas she's describing the white foam that comes along the edge of the ocean. All right, let's have a look at this side now, and we're going to start to do our job of visualizing. Name of the poem, we can see up the top, The Open Sea. Who's it by? Dorothea McKellar. Main idea of the poem, like we went through yesterday, the main idea of the poem is to make the reader fall in love with the sea. Awesome. How many stanzas does this one have? We've got 6 stanzas there. And now it wants us to draw a picture based on the picture that's been constructed in our heads. Okay, so now that we understand the words, we can build that picture. What I want you to do is I want you to have a look at this poem. I want you to choose your favorite stanza, and I want you to try and build a picture in your heads of that. What you need to do first is I want you to try and describe or put the stanza into your own words, because Dorothy is using a lot of figurative language like most poets would. We need to put that back into literal language so that we can easily convert it into a picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to pause here. I am going to choose my favorite stanza. I am going to rewrite it into my own words of what I can see in my head. Then I'm going to draw a picture of what it looks like. Okay, so I want you to do the same thing, just on a scrap piece of paper. I want you to have a look at the open sea. I want you to choose a stanza, and I want you to build a picture of that stanza in words and then in an actual picture. Okay, so this is my little drawing here of what I visualized in my head. So I chose the first stanza to have a look at here. I summarized it like this. I said that Dorothea McKellar is looking out a window at a market on the ocean, on the sandhills, just with a tiny bit of ocean visible there. So I obviously don't have colors here, but I've got my sandhills here. I've got little market stalls, and I've taken the word market from the word garden fair. So I've got the market here. I've got little people at the market. I've got plants, because I know that in my making a text to world connection, that I know that Junes often have reeds coming out of them. So I've drawn a couple of little reeds there. I've drawn the buildings at the harbor, and I've got a tiny bit of ocean there because it specifically says in the text that it's a slender slip, and it is curved like the crescent moon. So I tried to add a tiny bit of a curve there. Obviously it's not going to be curved like a full moon, because that's not how water works. That would be ridiculous. So it's just a tiny, gentle curve. Yeah, that's it. So I have broken down the first stanza to make my visualization. I would love to see what you guys came up with, if you could send me a photo. Your job now is to complete this sheet about Old Man Platypus. Okay? So this does not have any characters in it, but what you can do so that you get a deeper understanding of the characters and the settings is when you're doing that, picture what you think Old Man Platypus would look like based on the vocabulary in the poem and what you already know about platypus. Okay? Awesome. Happy writing, guys.